Today in RimWorld, we will be setting up a lunar base on one of the 2 moons of our home world, using RimNots 2 and Save Our Ship 2. And yes, this is just an excuse for me to mix these 2 mods and to play around with them a bit. I've always wanted to test them out together and to see if the mods even work together, and I thought building a lunar base might be the perfect opportunity to do so. So, let's go to space. Luckily for us, HQ has provided us with a nice nifty suit to keep us from dying up there, as well as a small little vessel. Quite cramped, quite literally the smallest ship that they could provide us with, it would seem. I know it doesn't look like much from this angle, but I think that's just RimWorld. Here's an artist rendition. You like it? Well, go hang it on your fridge or something. I don't have time for that shit as I'm going to space, baby. Mardi Gras, my beautiful Yorkshire pupper. I will see you, well, probably never. Go find a good home, little fella. Well, we ended up making it into orbit around the planet. It would seem that we're just underneath the asteroid belt in a low planetary orbit, which is a good thing, as that means we're not going to have to worry about asteroids colliding with our little vessel here. And perhaps even better, we've barely used any of our chem fuel. We have plenty left to go about traveling to any of these celestial bodies that we so choose. I believe we're going to go with the drier option for now, but we may investigate the more water-like moon in the very near future. Tally-ho, and away we go, lads! Well, that wasn't a very long journey at all, now was it? The place seems to be absolutely riddled with large, dull gray mountains as well as several a crater. Alright then, let's make history, shall we? Just kidding, that's what would have happened if I had completely forgotten to copy all of the EVA stat offsets and applying them to the spacesuit from RimNots 2, which I totally didn't forget to do, which is also something you should probably do too if you plan on playing along. We would actually take our first steps during the night time, which seems to be the only time here, though there is a little bit of light seeping through. To think that Mizaki, you of all people, are standing on a heavenly body, one that we've looked up at ever since we were just a tiny little girl in our village. Sure is beautiful here, but we also have a lot of work to do if we're ever going to set up a proper base. Luckily, it would seem our choice of satellite orbiting the planet was a good one, as this moon has an overabundance of steel ore as well as compacted machinery, the 2 resources that we really need for our base in general. We would of course need to take a good break and have ourselves a nice MRE for dinner in the darkness of our capsule, because there's no light shining at the moment. You know, she still has her helmet on. Is she eating it with a straw? But after my belly was filled with some freeze-dried cheeseburgers, it was time to get back to mining, acquiring some components this time around, and with the steel and components that we've gotten thus far, we would end up connecting a nice battery to the ship's solar panels. And after a careful bit of planning, I decided to just go ahead and make the lunar base in the closest little hill to us, as it's going to be the easiest for us to move back and forth to with our ship. I didn't plan much of this at all. They're all the same, okay? Since we have a very limited supply of food, about 15 MREs or so, we are going to make our top priority growing some proper food so that we don't starve to death up here. But to go about growing food on a desolate, isolated moon like this, you need quite a few different things. You need heaters so that the place isn't freezing cold, or below that, hydroponics to grow the food in, and you also need power to, well, power it all. As we were working on this list of things to check off on, we ended up having a cluster of cargo pods dropping nearby with some insect jelly. Perhaps a care package from HQ? I don't know, but we're going to eat it. Well, nevertheless, we would end up finishing our power generation with a much larger solar panel about the size size of our little vessel that we arrived in, as well as all our heaters and hydroponics basins. Rice being the durable and fast-growing plant that it is, it was the top choice for us to eat up here, and after sealing the room off, ensuring it was airtight, and letting the basins run for a little while, there was enough oxygen in the room that we could finally take our helmet off. It kinda smelled like burnt steak or gunpowder, but at least we didn't have to wear the helmet. For about a day or so, kinda hard to tell up here as there's very little sunlight, but we just kinda spent this time collecting more steel as well as components. It sure would help to have a partner up here. Maybe once we get a comms console going, we can request one. But for now, we're going to be tackling the mission all by our lonesome. That was alright though, more space rice for us, huh? Just in time, I might add, as we only had about 2 days worth of MREs left. I will say one of the bright sides is we can leave our rice kinda out in the open, and we don't have to worry about it perishing anytime soon, as it is absolutely freezing cold here. Now that we finally have our growing situation taken care of, and we do know for a fact that we want to build our base here, we need a proper airlock, which for the moment is also going to be serving as our battery room. And after that, we ended up building ourselves a smithy. Now this might seem like a strange decision, but the smithy is going to allow us to create a vital resource, with that being glass, which we can actually make out of the lunar chunks that we've been mining out of our base anyhow. That way we're repurposing the resources. Besides, every good home needs windows. We don't want this place to feel like a tomb. One of the very first rooms that we're going to be building, other than our growing room of course, is going to be a proper bedroom for moi. Using the glass that we had smelted, we built ourselves a beautiful bay window, allowing us to look outside into the open lunar landscape anytime we choose here in the bedroom, and we don't even have to worry about peeping Tom staring at us as we change out of our spacesuit because, well, we're the only person here. It was nice finally sleeping somewhere other than the ship for a change, somewhere we could take our helmet off as well, as we had to turn our life support systems off in there. It was kinda starting to feel like a coffin. Next order of business was going to be a dining room and kitchen combo. The reason for that, other than the fact that, well, we've completed most other primary rooms that we would need, is also because we need somewhere that we can go about cooking that rice that we've been growing, because raw rice, eating that not only wastes some of it, but also it doesn't taste very good. And again here you'll notice a large bay window along with 2 other large windows as well. We want this base to feel very open, and we want to be able to see as much of this moon as possible. There are few luxuries on this moon, but the view is definitely one of them. Finally, once we could ensure that it was airtight and warm enough, we began cooking our very first meals. Now don't get me wrong, freeze-dried cheeseburgers, chef's kiss, but a little bit of rice soup is a nice change of pace. At one point I spotted Mizaki standing in the corner, and I was a bit confused. Well, it turns out that she was praying, and I found this quite fitting, given the fact that she is a lone, brave explorer in the heavens themselves, admiring her God's creations from a much better vantage point than most of humanity. I also forgot to mention earlier on, but for recreation, we do actually have an interactive table that was part of the ship. It has some games, I guess like Pac-Man and Tetris, but you can also watch some pre-recorded videos on it. And she likes to eat here as well, so think of it kind of like a toddler with an iPad. For a while, we just kind of worked on smoothing out the walls of the lunar base. That way we wouldn't have to try to replace them, all risking opening up any holes to let the air seep out, and thus killing all of our plants, of course. Speaking of which, we would also add in a couple more hydroponics basins, and then we would end up putting a very heavy focus on collecting a lot of steel, as much as we could carry, quite literally, and the reason for that is we needed some proper flooring inside the base. Using the steel, we would end up making, you guessed it, steel tile flooring. Not exactly the most beautiful of all the flooring, but we don't really have time to go about cutting stones, and steel is very abundant here, so why not? Once these floors were finally completed, the base was actually completed as well. Not really, we're going to continue, of course, but as for a self-sustaining base that isn't too horrific to look at, I think we have indeed finally achieved that, and it only took us, well, a lot of work and a lot of time. Now that we have a proper base of operations here on the moon, though, I think it's time for us to build ourselves a comms console so that we can contact HQ and maybe request a little bit of assistance even. Okay, alright. Yeah, so it looks like they're going to be sending us someone as soon as possible. How kind of them. It would seem, that's, oh, you're not a human, huh? Okay, not exactly what we had in mind. Do you know how to speak? Okay. Well, our new friend here, who is going to need a name if any of you have any suggestions, might not be much for conversation, but he is one hell of a worker. I suppose that's why HQ sent him up here. Not only could he haul, but he could also help us deconstruct some of the chunks from the vessel that launched him and delivered him here, which gave us steel and components that we would end up reusing in our solar panel field for power, which we had to increase the size of because now we need to be able to recharge our mechanical friendo. After that project was completed, we actually started working on another section of the base itself. This is going to be an observation bay, but will also be doubling as a recreational room. Essentially, it is going to be a large spherical room where we can actually look out into the great beyond, the stars, the heavens, and also at the lunar surface itself. Basically, a great big room made of mostly glass. I've also ended up putting a television as well as a chess set in here, that way we can enjoy some recreation while doing so. But you might be asking yourself how we're watching television up here. How do you have cable? Well, actually it's satellite. With this new addition completed, we were also going to add on to our growing room with 2 new hydroponics basins, and then I changed my mind and added 3, but in 2 of them we are going to be growing some meat bushes. Essentially, these bushes are going to provide us with synthetic meat. That way we're not just eating rice up here, and we can get some much needed protein. In our 3rd hydroponics basin, though, we would also end up growing some cotton. That way we have some cloth to make some rugs, as well as some other things that require textiles. And I must say that it was by this point that I realized we were no longer just a self-sufficient base. We were no longer surviving on the moon's surface here. We were beginning to thrive on its surface. And not to toot my own horn, but it's no small feat. Alright, show of hands, how many of you have grown meat bushes on the moon? Yeah, I'll wait. Oh, and while we're waiting, here's an artist rendition of the lunar base that we've created. You like it? After a while, our new variety of plants were finally finished growing, and it was time for us to harvest them. As for the meat, we actually put some shelves outside to keep it frozen and non-spoiling, but it may be getting cooked by the radiation of the sun, what a little bit is coming through. Just more flavor. And as for our newly acquired cloth, we would end up making ourselves a proper jumpsuit, as we are naked underneath our spacesuit, and that's why I haven't taken it off thus far. Now we're talking. That is much better, much more comfortable. I do want to say that I had to change the recipe because for some reason it required chem fuel, but moving right along, since we are conquering this land here, if you could really even call it land, it's hardly soil, I thought it might be a good idea for us to illuminate the area as best we can. That way it's not as hard finding our way around, especially given the fact that there's so little sunlight here. I also think it'll be great to do this as it is going to be part of our plans to expand into another one of these hills, expanding the base furthermore that way as well. And realistically, I think we are a pale blue light on a dull, gray, sad surface of a moon. Almost like a vibrant drop of paint on an empty canvas surface. But we've really made it work, haven't we? We are doing absolutely great with absolutely zero hang-up. Uh-oh. Well, I don't think HQ sent her. She's definitely not one of ours. This cannot be good. Well, thank you ever so much for watching today's video all the way to the end. I very much appreciate you, and I do truly hope that you've enjoyed. I hope that you enjoyed this kind of sort of mini-series where we're building a moon base. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. In case anyone's curious as to why exactly I've decided to do this series, one, I've always wanted to mash those two mods together with having Save Our Ship and also Rimknots, so I thought this would be really cool to do that, especially before the new DLC and update, which is probably going to can the mods for a little while. But I also am struggling a bit to get out videos on Sundays right now since the announcement of the new update in DLC. I've been trying to work on videos about the blog posts and stuff that are coming out, seems like weekly right now. It's taking up a little bit of my time, so that's as to why we're getting these short little mini-series episodes on Sunday now. But yeah, again, I hope you guys have enjoyed. I love you guys, and I will see you later.